Okay, well, hey, welcome to our very special guest this afternoon. Man, myth, local legend, Fishboy. So welcome, Eric.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here. Oh no, hold your applause.
Yeah, no, give it up. No. We're gonna send them mixed signals about this the entire time. Right, so I always like to start off and ask about secret origin stories.
Sure.
So what is the secret origin story of Fishboy? I think I read somewhere that there was an elementary school incident.
Right, so the secret origin story is that in second grade, I went on a field trip to the Dallas World Aquarium where there was an open-topped aquarium. I reached my hand in, grabbed a fish, and swallowed that fish. Now, this story is completely false. At some point, I got tired of people asking me how the name Fishboy came about, and I created a story in order to have something interesting to tell. It eventually ended up in the Dallas Morning News, the Dallas Observer, after which Wikipedia was invented, and the story ended up on Wikipedia. And then, because you have to cite newspapers or official sources for Wikipedia, it became the myth became fact, became legend, and I probably shouldn't be confessing all of this into a civic center full of people, but the true story is that's the real mystery.
Well, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, will be glad to know that that is a fictional story that is now black and white printed news.
Right.
So, who can argue with that, right?
Yes, I'm totally pro PETA, pro animals.
Thank goodness, you heard it here first. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I asked you to maybe bring some of your albums, and let's do a little time traveling. What's one of the, I should ask this. What was your first album?
Right. So my first album, let's back up a little bit. So for those unaware, I am in a band called Fishboy that is from Denton, Texas. And I have been in the band Fishboy since I was 14, 15, when it was time to create a band name, right? I got Fishboy, and I've stuck with the same name my entire life. So, the teenage years, there were a lot of cassette releases, there were a lot of CDR releases. Those are unofficial discographies. Items. It really became official when we got a band together and we started playing shows, and we released an album in 2003 called Zip Bang Boom, which is sold out. It only came out on CD. And on that, there are a couple of high storytelling songs, because this is about storytelling and comics, right? And I drew out illustrations of what those songs look like. One song on that album is called Talking to the Doctor After Pressing the Elevator Button, which grew on your forehead overnight, causing your legs to grow uncontrollably. It's a story of someone who presses the elevator button on their forehead that grew overnight, causing their legs to grow uncontrollably, and explaining the situation to the doctor. Twist ending, the man with the tall legs runs for president.
Did he win?
He did win. I mean, it's canon that he won.
It's canon.
So there's a couple little other songs. There's a song about time traveling to save Abraham Lincoln. There's a song about a four-legged car. Very small, simple, story-driven songs with little illustrations pointing out those songs. Okay, 2005. We put out an album called Little D. Little D is more abstract lyrics, but there's a couple story songs on there. There's a song about a Christmas tree who comes back to life after being thrown away and becomes the world's worst roommate. This got turned into a music video. You can still find it on, early YouTube. And fantastic. At which point I attend film school, RTVF major at UNT, and I get really into storytelling. I get really into long form storytelling, and I graduate and I decide I'm probably never going to be able to convince enough people to make a movie with me, but what I can do is I can sit in my living room and write a album about the story that I want to tell. I can sit in my living room and draw a comic about a story that I want to tell. And that's really the biggest intersection of movies. Excuse me. That's really the biggest intersection of comics and music, is that they can be self-contained art forms that you can spend an infinite amount of time or a short amount of time on and make them yourselves and be able to do it yourself. And that is why I really identify with both concepts. So, 2011, I graduate film school and I release the album Albatross, How We Failed to Save the Lone Star State with the Power of Rock and Roll. And this album tells the story of going on a tour/crime spree with the ghost of Buddy Holly. And they're hitting up every single town in Texas, robbing a bank, playing a show, because the front person of the band has been told since he was a young lad that one of the songs is going to save Texas, but he doesn't know which song or how.
That's great. So for some of you who may not be aware of Fishboy, this is what he's known for. He's known for, I would say, rock opera.
Rock opera, right.
Rock folk opera, something?
I try not to use the word rock opera because it connotates hair metal, classic rock, which is not really the style that I play. Theater. It's very anti-theater. So I'm not anti-theater, but it's not really theater. When I was around the albatross age, the age of an albatross, when I was around in my early 20s, I got really, really into British invasion music, like The Who and the Kinks and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. And The Who have this album called Tommy, right? It's a rock opera, right. Big rock opera. I listened to Tommy. This thing doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know, I can't follow the story at all. But I love the early Who, and I was like, well, what would happen if the early Who made an album where you could get the story from the lyrics? You got it. And I was like, that's the album I want to make, because I followed the simple philosophy of an artist to make the thing you don't see in the world, right? I want to see The Who make an album where I understand what's happening.
But that's perfect, because the thing that's always struck me about your creations is that they are so multifaceted. I mean, so I know you draw. If you guys have been by Fishboy's table over there, you'll see he has some sketches out. And so yeah, actually I was telling Brian earlier that this panel shouldn't be called Fishboy and the Intersection. Fishboy is the intersection with comics, because for me, since I got here in like 2008, you've had art. Art has been part of it.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about how you say you're creating something that you want to see that's not already out there in the wild. Tell me about that. Why those two mix together perfectly for you?
Right. So it goes along with that time period of my life. I got very inspired by the artist Daniel Johnston. Daniel Johnston he drew thousands of paintings, thousands of drawings, just with magic markers, just with a pen, because he had to make this art, because he wanted to see it in the world. And a fantastic documentary about Daniel Johnston came out called The Devil and Daniel Johnston. And it accentuated this thing where he is an artist working with very lo-fi technology, but he's mass creating this thing. And toward the end of the movie, it shows that he's putting out these galleries where people are buying his art, people are loving his art, and very inspired by that as someone who has a DIY ethos. So around that time, after Albatross comes out, Albatross has a comic that is related to it, but it's only like 10 panels. After that, 2008, the big economic crisis happened, and my work slowed down, and I was like, well, look, if Daniel Johnston can make it work, I'm gonna start doing a lot more art, and I'm gonna try and treat my art not just like a flyer, not just like a side thing. I'm gonna try and treat my stuff like an artist. I was gifted a little tablet for my laptop, and I started drawing comics every single day. So I have a year of comics in 2010 or something. Very basic, funny things that people said to me. But I slowly got better because I started doing it every day and started taking my art seriously. And so the next album, 2011, is an album called Classic Creeps. And each song on that album is its own little story, and all the stories are connected. But for that album artwork, that's sold out. I can't show it to you right now. But for that album artwork, I did a portrait of each one of the characters. And so you could see what the characters looked like. And for that one, I also offered like a special deluxe package where you could, I would embroider. It's an embroidered portrait. I didn't mention that. I would make a portrait and embroider it, and you'd be able to get a deluxe package, and you'd be able to get a piece of the art of the artist from the album. And that's a big thing that I have found about making art and being an artist. It's just simply having the confidence, the little bit of confidence to say, I'm an artist. I'm not just someone making stuff, right?
It's not just something you do, it's someone you are.
Right.
And I always find that that's interesting when I talk to people who are creatives and driven by the creative. It's not like you have a choice. It's like written in your DNA, right? But there's always, I've never talked to an artist who just has complete self-confidence. There's always that, I'm not as good as so-and-so, or is this good enough to share? A little bit of embarrassment.
Right. And I have found over the years as I do it that it becomes more personal, even when I'm not trying to do something personal. But from this aspect of I have to do it to figure out my thoughts, right? So like 2014, I put out this album. I'm trying to make us go through the catalog as we go. 2014, again, I'm reaching like, how many years is that? 10, 11 years of being in a band. And I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna take off. I don't know if I'll be able to make this music thing work. But I should keep diving into being a comics artist, diving into being an artist. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna really go for it, and I'm gonna make my own little graphic novel this time. I'm gonna make something bigger than ever before. And so I told the story of Topsy the elephant, who was murdered by Thomas Edison. I saw this video, a horrific video of an elephant being electrocuted, and I so badly wanted this elephant to have revenge upon the person who electrocuted her. And I said, you know what? This is not a story that could necessarily be told in like a movie form, right? But one person can sit in his living room and draw out a full novel that's maybe a little too dark to be like a Pixar movie, but I can tell Kill Bill meets Pixar of the revenge of a ghost elephant. And I found, as I was writing the story, that a little bit of me felt like I was electrocuted by someone. I was like, dealing with this sense of isolation and forgiveness. Ultimately, this is a story of forgiveness. Topsy forgives Thomas Edison at the end. Spoiler, but it's ultimately trying to overcome any sort of like hard feelings you have, bitterness feelings. and certainly me being an artist for 12 years or whatever, musician, feeling like maybe I had a chance at some point to be a professional musician and missed it. You know, certainly all those deep feelings of an artist at that age came out in this little ghost elephant thing. Even if you can't necessarily see it, I'm singing things to myself, which is the most important part of art, is that you're talking to yourself, trying to figure out what...
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't, so an elephant, which I really love this. It is so kooky and such a wild ride. I literally didn't know what was happening page to page. I was like, I don't know where he's going with this. But every folk hero will also usually have a supervillain. I understand Bob's Burgers into this equation somewhere.
Right. So here's what happened. I got halfway through writing this album. It was deep into production, and an episode of the Fox primetime television TV show, Bob's Burgers, came out, where one of the children in the show makes a musical about Topsy the elephant. And I was crushed. I was like, I took too long making this. What did I do? Do I have to abandon these excellent songs? And I decided that no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to finish my thing, I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. And for many years, I would show this to people, and they'd go, oh, like the Bob's Burgers episode. And now I've gotten to a point, it's the 10-year anniversary, by the way, is next week of this album. I've gotten to a point while I bring this up, half the people don't even know what Bob's Burgers is. Like, because there's hundreds of episodes of Bob's Burgers now. What are the odds that you've seen that one? They're slim at this point.
That's hilarious, though, because just the serendipity of it, right? Because you had that mostly in the can, right? I mean,
but also, like, it's a story about forgiveness. It's a story about, like, getting over your bitter feelings. And so that was part of the reason I'm like, I gotta finish this. This would be untrue to the Topsy that I'm writing to be so bitter about an episode of Bob's Burgers. So then, 2017, let's move forward.
Let's go.
We got this album, Art Guards, where I'm committed to being an artist, rain or shine. I want to talk about the ups and downs of being an artist. I want to talk about all the weird aspects it is, all the weird art you can make. I want to give artists encouragement, like I'm giving you now. I hadn't reached that point yet. So I take the Classic Creeps format of writing stories about people or about characters. Each story is a different character, and I write 9 songs about 9 artists, and I connect them. Their stories are all connected in different ways, and they all culminate in a big scene, which is something I had always wanted to do. Feeling like the end of Classic Creeps didn't have the perfect ending. I want to perfect the ending here. I want to do a big action scene with all the characters. And I pulled it off. I find that if you have these big aspirations, if you have these big bucket lists, saving those for years if you can, setting those aside is a great motivator when you hit a point as an artist and you say, you know, what's next? I have no idea what to do next. Everything seems like I don't know how to say it. Everything seems like I've done it already. What is my next big interesting thing? Even if you have like a huge goal, it's like, well, go after that, chip away at it.
Yeah.
And so for this one, it was, I want to have a theme, and I want to have all the characters come in at the end. And it's deeply inspired by a lot of Denton as well. I pulled back the Denton inspiration. There's a pizza place very similar to J&J's Pizza. There's
well, even on the back,
I don't know.
You've got the Fine Arts Theater.
We got the Fine Arts Theater on the back. Again, I wrote a song about a lighting technician. That's another great tip. There's a song called Aspiring Lighting Technician, and I wanted to write about someone who was a lighting technician, but I had no idea what a lighting technician was. So I was like, well, let me write about someone who wants to be a lighting technician, but doesn't know how lighting technicians work. So I came up with the song Aspiring Lighting Technician, and the aspiring lighting technician takes all of her lamps, her whole collection, her flashlights, her lamps. She goes into the basement of a pizza place to audition for a band. And her dad, who deeply thinks that she should be on stage instead of behind stage, sneaks in and he watches her audition and he finally gets it. She is a lighting tech. And I explain my vision that all these lamps are going on and off to the music. And the first or second time I played this, someone yelled from the audience, "This is like Stranger Things, the new hit show on Netflix."
Holy serendipity.
And it's not. And I was like, no, it's not. This is different. But thankfully, no one remembers Stranger Things. It has not gone anywhere.
Right. I mean, somebody will have to Google that later, right?
But yes, I had a vision of making this into a movie, right? I was like, this is gonna be this movie. After I finish this album, I'm going to figure out a way to make these little short films. And so I wrote everything with the intent of it being a low budget film. And when I finished it and it came out, I was like, I don't want to think about this album anymore. I don't want to adapt this into anything. Or what I did was like, I'm gonna make a comic for the insert, because I can make a comic by myself in my living room, and I can put it out via CD or via little mini comic, so I can still tell that story without having to convince a crew of 20, 30 people.
I mean, that is the wonderful thing about comic art, right? Is that you are literally only limited by your imagination. I mean, yes, you don't have to worry about special effects or, like you say, getting entire crews out there and then toiling around for the perfect shot without any car horns going off, right? So, but to have that kind of creative control is something you can make it what you see it as.
Right. And it just takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of, really, it takes a lot of convincing yourself that you can do it. I mean, that's the most thing. You just need someone to push you a little bit, and you can do it. So then it brings us up to the present, right?
Yeah.
We have an album called Waits Giving. If you've seen the banner in the back of Waits Giving, it's because I don't own a Fishboy banner. I only own a Waits Giving banner. Waits Giving is very similar to Art Guards. It's about 10 characters. And I decided I want to make something like Art Guards, but I want to take it a step further. I want to tell a story that spans over decades of a little city that all takes place similar to Denton. It takes place in the same locations over a certain time, but I want to have these people dealing with patience, because I myself had a newborn child and I was not able to write as quickly or as productively as I can, because being an adult with a child, it takes time away from being your creative self, right? So I said, that's fine. I'm gonna write about patience and it's eventually gonna come out. So I made all the characters about patience, and I had another one of these bucket list things that I wanted to accomplish, which was to end everything in a heist. I was like, there's never been a good heist song, right? Can you think of one? I can't think of one. So sticking with my philosophy of putting things into the world that I don't see in the world, that I would like to see as a fan, we're at a very fan-friendly place, I said, I've never heard a heist song. I want to hear a heist song. How would that even work? And I thought, well, what you would need to do is you need to set up the characters for the heist throughout the whole album. And then when you get to the heist, you realize each person has their own unique trait that they can contribute to the heist. And and I said, well, what are they gonna heist, right?
Right.
So if you are a fan of Denton, Texas lore, which everyone here maybe is, are you guys from Denton, Texas? All right. So in 2012, a group of people noticed that there was a time capsule in front of the Wells Fargo building that was supposed to be dug up. And Wells Fargo missed the date. Wells Fargo missed the date. For whatever reason, the building had changed hands. No one was going to dig up this time capsule. And so a group of people started showing up on the day that the time capsule was supposed to be dug up and celebrating some sort of bureaucratic incompetency. Why has this not been dug up? So like 2 years after this joke celebration, ironic celebration happened, Wells Fargo dug it up. They didn't tell anyone. I kept the story in the back of my head, and I realized that if I want to do a heist, then maybe I could tie in this time capsule thing, right? So I was like, well, let's have what would happen if this holiday exploded and became a real huge holiday for this city. And so we got Waitsgiving. And so the premise of Waitsgiving is that someone finds a time capsule that hasn't been dug up and it has their birthday on it. And they're like, why? Why is this time capsule? What is going on? How come no one's dig it up? They take it to City Hall, and City Hall says, we're going to turn this into a real life holiday and celebrate never digging it up. And over the course of 20 years, the holiday explodes in the story into a holiday called Waitsgiving. And we slowly learn what is in the time capsule. I won't spoil it for you, but it involves music, it involves a band, and they pull off a heist at the very end of the album, and celebrate the last Waitsgiving. The song is called The Last Waitsgiving. So, there's more to the story, people.
Yes.
I'm sure I'm way over time, and I'm telling the story to a lot of people who know this story. But, COVID happened, and I couldn't play a release show, and I didn't have a band because they dissolved under COVID. But I got a recording, and I got a great sounding album, and I was like, hey everyone, I know shows are not back. Meet me at the courthouse. Let's celebrate the real Waitsgiving. Let's celebrate Waitsgiving as if it's a real holiday. I'll walk around the Denton Square, and it's on the back of the record, and I will show you the album. I'll play you the album. And I played them the album, and the following year, we did it again. Yep. People were like, you gotta do it again. And the following year, we did it again. And now we've done it 4 times, and it keeps getting bigger, and people keep showing up for Waitsgiving. I don't know how many times we're gonna do it. I figure at a certain point, I'm gonna have to say, okay, this is the last Waitsgiving. You guys have heard this album too much. It's not interesting anymore.
Oh, untrue. So this is the thing that's great, because whenever Eric says he shows up and plays his songs, it was that was part of kind of the excitement of it, is because it was connected to us emerging also from COVID. So, I mean, talk about another serendipity, right? You're writing an album and creating it about patience, and then we all have to learn that also.
Another weird coincidence is that I wrote this album, and by the way, I finished writing it 6 months before COVID, before the pandemic, and spoiler alert, inside the time capsule is someone's album from the 1970s that they never get to share. It's a lost album. So I'm sitting on this album about a lost album that might become a lost album if I don't figure out a way to share it inside of the pandemic. And I'm the only one who knows about it. My bass player, you know, thank God for him, I could emotionally lean on him and tell him how weird this was. It's like, I wrote this story about a lost album and it's gonna be lost forever. And he's like, I know, it's weird. And we figured it out. We figured out how to record it and get it out and put it into the world and create a real holiday.
Well, exactly. You kind of willed it into existence, right? So,
What does this have to do with comics? Wow.
well, the same with creating something from your imagination, right on? Because this is how I remember it. Because I remember going to I can't remember if it was the first Waitsgiving or a second one, but that was part of the logic of like we're meeting outside. Like it's okay. We're not going to be in an enclosed place. And so you did this kind of traveling singing story. Yeah, it was a walking tour also around the courthouse, right? And so it very much had all the feelings of theatrical staging. I mean, the square is a stage.
Right.
And I mean, it's just awesome, right? So yeah, I remember that's what kind of struck me too, is that those themes that you were singing about patience, and then, you know, that those were also resonating with everybody there.
And I got this idea. I got inspired to meet at the courthouse and play for everyone because a few years before, during the Art Guard's time, someone from Australia visited Denton, and he was like, it's too bad there's not a Fishboy show happening. And I was like, I'll make a Fishboy show happen. Let's go to the square and play. And I just played a show for him. So I was like, hey,
Right?
no one cares if you show up at the square and play a concert. I'm saving this in the back of my head.
Well, that's the other flex, because this does go back to, I think one of the things that might be a saving grace for this album is that you also leaned into art. I remember you making some videos with your cartoons and putting those up, and then people really responded to them. I was kind of blown away that from like around the world, people are like liking and commenting.
It's a very weird, it's a very weird world. Social media is in a weird slot machine situation right now for a very small window, and I'm trying to put myself out there and take advantage of that because I don't see it lasting very long. But yes, people are on these apps and like hitting random stuff. And I forgot to mention also, like, thankfully the artwork of this album was graciously collaborated on with Andy Hirsch, who is here today.
Oh.
Andy has a table. He did the cover for this. I described how all the characters looked. I made little sketches, and I was like, please, I know this is gonna take me too long to make this. This is what I envision. Will you help me? He's like, yes, absolutely. So he's here today. His stuff is amazing.
Andy's stuff is great, yeah. I think I interviewed him last year for Comic Expo, and he's, great stuff. I took home 2 of his books, and my grandkids just eat it up. Well, so I guess last question.
Okay.
Let's think a little bit about the future. Are there any current things that you're working on, ideas that are kicking around in the old head, or do you already have the next project ready?
I just finished writing my next album. My daughter is so exhausted with this. She's so exhausted with me. I just finished writing my next album. It's about courage. It's like Waitsgiving times 2. It's amped up on the complexities in a good way. My bucket list goal for that album is to there's 2 of them, and I'll tell you one. The other I'm keeping a secret for now. But one of them is to have a chase scene. What is a song with a chase?
I'll go like Jack Benny, something like that.
My daughter is saying 35. I've been talking for 35 minutes.
Oh, she's giving me the sign.
Anyway, I want to make an album that ends with a giant chase through a neighborhood, and I crafted a story based on that, and the band is learning it now. We hope to record it soon. It's going to be called Bravest Neighbors. I also wanted something about community and neighborhoods, and to try and bring people locally together. So my bucket list goal, my wish list goal, if this accidentally gets heard by the entire world, is to celebrate celebrate your neighbor. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker when I tell it to you right now.
Hey, just print it. Print it.
It's not that. It's not that cheesy.
Well, that sounds exciting, and I got to just say thank you, because you are one of the unique characters that makes Denton Denton.
Thank you.
And
You as well.
And
if you guys are on Denton Downtowners Facebook,
don't listen to him. Give it up for Fishboy. Give him a round of applause.